Hi, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. Today's testimony in the Sean Combs sex trafficking trial taking us inside Diddy's inner circle. A former Combs Enterprises employee who also worked as a personal assistant agreeing to take the stand against his former boss, but only after being granted immunity. So far, telling the jury it was his job to clean up the rooms after freak-offs. Also tonight, our first look inside Combs' Miami mansion, the day federal agents busted the gate open last year to raid it. A federal agent testifying about the evidence, guns and ammo seized from Diddy's home that were found near alleged freak-off supplies, which included dozens of bottles of baby oil and boxes of platform heels, bondage restraints, and bundles of rope. Also photographed as evidence that day, motivational messages on Combs' bathroom mirror that included "You a legend" and "Upward motion," and drugs. Lots of drugs, including ones found in plastic bags inside a Gucci bag, and orange tablets with the Tesla logo that tested positive for ecstasy. Now, Combs has pleaded not guilty to all allegations in this case. A former FBI special agent will join us to break down what it takes to carry out a raid like this. Plus, a former assistant warden is here live with what Combs' life behind bars might look like. But first, let's get right to our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Aaron, that special agent was on the stand today testifying about what was found at Combs' Miami Beach property. What did they find?
Well, you started to list it, Eva, the guns, the drugs, the freak-off supplies. And I think what was most striking, perhaps, for the jury to see was the proximity. There were the AR-15 style assault rifles right in the same shelving unit as the baby oil and the Astroglide and the platform heels and the lingerie. And then in another part of the house, there was the loaded .45 caliber handgun that was found in a red suitcase. All of this was being kept by Combs for what reason we don't know, but federal prosecutors, I think, are hoping to make a link, especially between the guns and the freak-offs, because their whole theory of the case is that Combs used violence and the threat of violence to coerce women, particularly Cassie Ventura, but other women as well, into these sexual performances.
Aaron, was there any reaction to this evidence inside the courtroom?
The jury, I think, was interested in seeing the weapons, particularly the .45 caliber handgun the special agent from Homeland Security Investigations picked up and paraded in front of the jury box. The drugs seemed less interesting to the jury, but they did see quite a lot of them, including, you mentioned, the Tesla logoed ecstasy. There were other drugs found in a box, a wooden box on the bathroom sink. It had a gold ovular label, Puffy.
The jury also heard today from psychologist Dawn Hughes, who specializes in sex trauma. What did she say?
There's something so voyeuristic about this entire trial, this lurid look into the private and often violent sex life of Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura so far. And what Dawn Hughes did was firmly ground it in trauma, in psychological principles about trauma, domestic violence, and sexual abuse. And she could not testify about the specifics. Expert witnesses are not allowed to clinically examine a witness or a victim or the defendant. But generally, she talked about why abuse victims stay in abusive relationships and how they cope with the abuse. And some of the things that she described mimicked the testimony of Cassie Ventura and others, how she felt like she couldn't get out of the relationship because he controlled her finances. Her friend Carrie Morgan and Dawn Richard both mentioned how during a beating that Combs would inflict, that they said they witnessed, she would curl up in a fetal position. And Dawn Richard and the expert, Hughes, said that one coping mechanism is to curl up in the ball on the floor.
We also heard from a former employee of Sean Combs, George Kaplan, who was called to testify. Who is he?
He was a former assistant. About 15 months, he worked as Sean Combs' executive assistant. He said they one of four of them during his tenure. And for a time, he was meant to be the cleanup man from the freak-offs. He said he would first stock the hotel rooms. He said there was a hotel bag that contained baby oil and Astroglide and other items that the jury's already heard about. and then he was meant to clean up the hotel rooms himself, tidy them up, he said, to protect Combs's reputation.
I have to ask you, at one point he was able to get an immunity order. What was the reaction when that happened?
Well, the jury didn't see it, but he said he was otherwise going to invoke his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. We don't know why he wanted it. We don't know whether he's about to testify about crimes that potentially he committed that would necessitate that kind of an immunity. He did testify, though, about procuring illegal drugs for Combs. He said he would give cash that Combs gave him and then bring Combs the bag of drugs, including one that contained MDMA.
Aaron Katersky there at the courthouse. Thank you so much. Let's dig into all of this. We've got our ABC News legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer, with us. You were also there in court today. So, Brian, just bring us into that room. What was the biggest moment of the day?
So I'm going to piggyback off of what Aaron said. One of the biggest moments of the day was when George Kaplan took the stand. And I think maybe not so much because the juror wasn't there or the people in the audience, but I think for the attorneys, we all understood, especially attorneys who practice in the Southern District of New York, immunity isn't given out lightly. We're all expecting to hear something, some kind of testimony that he needed immunity because he's going to testify about either criminal acts that he did on his own or at the behest of Sean Combs that he wants protection from. Now, the beginning of the testimony, just about buying drugs, yes, criminal, but I think as we continue to tomorrow's testimony, we'll probably hear a lot more because this is the individual who set up these freak-offs and put it down. The question is, what did he see? What did he know? And what did he believe to be cleaning up after?
Let's also talk about the show and tell that the jury got today. That special agent who was part of the Miami raid, they brought in the evidence. Why not just show the jury pictures?
Well, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Seeing it physically yourself is a lot different. Don't forget, we are in the Southern District of New York. Many of the jurors are either from Manhattan, they are in Westchester or the Bronx. And so seeing a physical gun and understanding what it is, the size of it. I know we were talking before, I don't think they're going to get to hold the guns themselves, but seeing it is one thing. But the defense really pushed back on this idea because don't forget, this is a very large home and compound, trying to make the argument that, you know what, other people work and live here. Maybe Sean Combs doesn't possess these, even though some of the serial numbers are scratched off.
The other thing that was kind of surprising waking up this morning, rapper Kid Cudi was expected to testify today, but apparently there was a note sent last night to the judge signaling otherwise. It's like a late night note. Are we going to hear from him? What happened here?
The idea is we still are going to hear from Kid Cudi. Don't forget, in Cassie's civil lawsuit, there was a relationship between the two for a period of time. There's also from Cassie's lawsuit and from the indictment itself that Kid Cudi allegations are connected to the racketeering conspiracy, specifically arson. And we know that Kid Cudi did come out to the New York Times in 2023 saying it's all true in reference to Cassie's civil lawsuit, where she claimed that Sean Combs threatened to blow up Kid Cudi's vehicle and wanted his friends present to see it as a way of controlling and using force to keep Cassie close to him.
We'll have to wait and watch for that testimony. Brian Buckmeyer, thank you so much. We learned a lot about the raid of Diddy's Miami home. Let's bring in ABC News contributor and former FBI special agent in charge, Richard Frankel. You worked for the Bureau for 20 years, supervised and executed many FBI raids. And I want to point out that you were not involved in any raids involving Sean Combs, but just walk us through how something like this goes down. Once a judge signs off on a raid, what happens next?
Well, actually, the judge doesn't specifically sign off on the raid. He will authorize a warrant. He'll authorize a search warrant, arrest warrant. And then once you have that, then you begin the process of doing surveillances of the location to see what they're like, finding out who's inside the location, starting to plan everything associated with the arrest and the execution of the search warrants. How many people you're going to need, what time you're going to go, who's going to be at the front door, the back door. All of that is planned out once you get those warrants.
The government actually released images and maps of Diddy's home. Is that a typical part of the planning?
Oh, yeah. You're going to have maps. You're going to have maps not only of that area, but you're going to have maps going to the courthouse, if that's where you're going to be bringing people to after, if it's an arrest. You're going to have maps to a hospital in case somebody's injured. And then you're going to have an overall map of the area so that you know where you're going in. You're going to have all those four sides of a location marked because you may have people doing entry on the front. You may have people at the back door and on the side doors. And then you're going to have people around the perimeter to make sure that no one either gets into the perimeter or out of the perimeter.
A lot of planning, it seems, goes on. Today, the jurors saw some images of what was inside Diddy's home, including seeing the guns and the drugs. You know, once those agents are in the house, how do they go through everything?
Well, you do it in a very systematic manner. You're not going in there and just, going through one room and just checking things. You're going to have somebody who's in charge of the execution of the search warrant. And that person is going to make sure that you go from room to room and that you cover every part of that search warrant to make sure that you've looked in every spot. And as you go through it, you're going to have people with forms, with paper, that are going to fill out what's been found in the room, where it's been found. You're going to have photographers. You're going to have other people just overwatching the area to be able to swear that something was found in a certain location. So it's a very intricate search, especially when you're doing a search of this nature.
When you talk about a search of this nature, this is an extremely high-profile target like Sean Combs. How does that impact how you guys do things?
Well, the goal is that you do every search the same way. But the fact that it was Sean Combs, you're going to make sure that you are dotting the I's, crossing the T's, that you may have extra people there because it's expected that this is going to go to trial. And also because of the size of the location, you're going to have to make sure that you are going through each room and checking every nook and cranny. In other searches, you may have an idea of where something is, or it's just a small location. But in this instance, it was a very large residence, and you had a lot of area to cover. And during that time, you also know that you're going to have press looking at you, you're going to have the public looking at you. So you have to make sure you're doing this all according to plan.
Richard Frankel, thank you so much for being with us today. Still ahead, Sean Diddy Combs' life behind bars. We're joined by a former warden for more on what his life is like now. And did Diddy blow up Kid Cudi's car? Why, that's a top search online. Stay with us. Welcome back to Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy. Let's break down the legal strategies we saw playing out in court today. Brian Buckmeyer is back playing in the defense. Bernarda Villalona playing the prosecutor. Bernarda, let's start with you. The evidence that we saw here today, guns, ammo, those freak-off supplies. What are prosecutors wanting the jury to think seeing all those things?
So the prosecutor definitely wants to paint a picture in the sense of that you heard testimony already from Katersky and other witnesses about the ingredients at any freak-off, having to deal with the baby oil and the Astroglide. But now here you have confirmation, you have corroboration, because guess what? It was found in Diddy's home. So now you have more than a person's testimony as a piece of evidence. Now you have the physical evidence showing that. Now in terms of the gun, now when we talk about racketeering, conspiracy, when we talk about RICO, you think of mob style people, right? Guess what? Diddy is considered the leader of that RICO conspiracy. So you want to tie that mob mentality with, guess what? 2 AR-15s. Look at this bad guy, this big guy. He has AR-15s in his home, and also try to dirty him up a bit. Hey, in the end, they recovered it from his house, so it's fair game for the prosecution.
Yeah, okay, for the defense, this evidence, is it a problem?
Why? Whose guns is it? Is it registered to Sean Combs? Does it have his fingerprints? Does it have his DNA?
It was in his bedroom. It was in his freak closet.
Okay, so I think for the defense, the argument here is this is not my home, or your home that only one person lives in it. Who has access to Sean Combs' home? This is a mansion.
His master bedroom. Like, who else has access to his master bedroom and is inside of his closet?
You mean one of his master bedrooms of the 6, 7, 8 homes that he has where people both work and live in his home? There's a studio in his home. There's all a bunch of things. The defense tried to get out the fact that this investigation was not thorough in the sense of trying to identify Sean Combs as the individual who actually owns these guns. And they had multiple ways of doing so. And so you create reasonable doubt by saying this is a home not like ours.
But they don't have to prove that he owns it. They just have to prove that, actually, they don't have to prove anything having to deal with the guns, because there's no allegation that he possessed a gun in an indictment.
Well, let's
so he's
talk
not
about those
charged
guns a
with
little
it.
bit, because we were told they were defaced serial numbers on
Exactly,
those
so
guns.
you can't track them.
I mean, why? Why have defaced serial number guns in your home?
We can ask the former prosecutor, and she's going to have her answer. But the idea is that you're trying to evade criminality, that you have a defaced gun because you don't want it to be traced. It's either traced to another crime, or you don't want to have it traced back to you if it is used for a crime. But again, the idea becomes, this is Sean Combs, who lives in a massive house where many people live and work there. And this is also Florida, where people have guns for multiple reasons. And so if they're not attaching the guns to Combs or some sort of criminal enterprise, it's simply that these are guns are here and they're could be his.
Yeah, but the inference is still there because remember, you have the Mr. James who testified as to that one incident where they were going after Suge Knight, and guess what? Diddy had 3 guns on his lap. Granted that this house is the Florida house, not the California house. I am curious to see whether at the California mansion, what is it that they recovered from there?
Okay, well, let's also talk about the other thing that happened today that I thought was really interesting, which is this whole immunity situation.
Oh, yes.
The former assistant asking for immunity before he testified. For the prosecutor, why would you grant immunity?
So I was in the courtroom when this all went down. So the AUSA decided to do this out of the presence of the jury, meaning the jury wasn't present when the witness got on the stand and said that he was going to exercise his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. So this happened out of the presence of the jury. I would back it up a bit. When Mr. Kaplan first walked into the courtroom, Diddy had turned around, looked at him, and they smiled at each other and head nodded before he actually got on the stand. And I was like, the fix is already in. So you already knew he was going to say that he wanted immunity because he doesn't want to testify against Sean Combs. Now he's finally on the stand. When it comes to determining as a former prosecutor whether you want to give a person immunity, you have to get something of value. There must be something of value that this witness is able to give you, that you're willing to give them immunity, saying, guess what? You get a free pass for whatever you're going to testify, minus perjury.
And they know that. And so what the defense is going to do is say, no one gets immunity just because they have something to say. They give immunity because they have something significant to help in the case. So the question is, are you making up that significant thing so that the government doesn't come after you? Because oftentimes you get immunity. It's not just because well, we're being nice to you, let's give it to you. No, we're going to convict you of a serious crime and you're going to spend serious time in jail, or you give us something and then we don't come after you. So is that something real or is it fake?
But then why would you be smiling at the defendant and nodding heads if there was something to give? I mean, I don't know.
It was an uncomfortable situation in a sense where, but since it happened outside of the presence of the jury did not see that. It was a completely different story when Mr. Kaplan came in to take the stand in front of the jury. There was no head nod. There was no face contact between the two. He went straight to the stand and took the stand. And of course, his attorney was also present inside of that courtroom as well.
We'll have to wait and see what else he says tomorrow. Bernarda, Brian, always fun with you too. Still ahead, Sean Diddy Combs' life behind bars. We're joined by a former warden for more on what his life is like now. And did Diddy blow up Kid Cudi's car? Why, that's a top search online. Stay with us. Welcome back. Sean Diddy Combs has been spending his days at the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan, but his nights have been spent nearly 5 miles away at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, also known as MDC. It's a federal jail that's become the home for a who's who of high-profile defendants in recent years. Sam Bankman-Fried, Ghislaine Maxwell, Luigi Mangione, Svetlana, the alleged stowaway, just some of the detainees who have spent time at MDC. So what is life like in a jail with so many notable names? Joining me now is someone who knows MDC inside and out. Christine Dinan spent more than 2 decades working for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. She spent 2 of those years as an associate warden at MDC. Christine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Eva.
Now, I know it's been a while since you worked at MDC, and you were not there when Sean Combs was detained, but just take us inside the jail. What makes MDC different from other detention centers?
It's much like other detention centers in such that how they're housed, inmate movement back and forth. A jail is just like a prison. It's a microcosm of society. So every possible need that an inmate could have is there and available. It might not be the same quality that they would get in the street, but nonetheless, everything is there for them.
What's a typical day?
I'm sorry?
What's a typical day like for someone like Sean Combs? Does he get any kind of special treatment inside a jail like this?
Sure. So it all depends on where they're housed. So individuals housed in a special housing unit will have a much different day than an individual in general population. Individuals in general population will generally rise at a certain time. Food will be brought to them. In jails, because there's the need often to keep other inmates separated from one another, Inmates do not have freedom to roam throughout the jail. It's generally very structured movement and generally under an escort. If they're in 24-hour lockdown or a special housing unit, their movement is very, very limited. And they would essentially leave their cell for maybe an hour, maybe more, depending upon the jail, to go to recreation, get some outside air. And then upon request, they can leave their cell sometimes if they need to go to the law library, for example, which is also located in that unit.
I'm curious, why have we seen so many big names locked up there at MDC?
That would end up falling on the arresting agent, right? So whoever ends up at a jail is based on the law enforcement agency that comes before it. So the role of the jail is really to house and confine individuals that are brought to them, in this case, by the United States Marshals, the FBI, some kind of federal agency, and those individuals cannot afford bail. So, or their crimes are such that, they would cause drama on the street. They have a potential flight risk, or their crime is so severe that they want to deny bail.
Christine Dinan, thank you so much for joining us and helping us understand what life there is like. Well, time now to take a look at what's trending online when it comes to this trial. Some of today's biggest searches include, did Diddy blow up Kid Cudi's car? What happened to Kim Porter? Is the trial going to be televised? And how much is Diddy worth? ABC News contributor Kelly Carter joins us now from Los Angeles. She covers entertainment and pop culture for us. So that first search, let's talk about this. Did Diddy blow up Kid Cudi's car? Cassie Ventura testified last week that Combs threatened to blow up Kid Cudi's car after learning of her relationship with him. What can you tell us about this one?
Yeah, we got to go back to that 2023 civil suit that Cassie filed. And in there, she alleges that Sean said he would do something like blow up a car, and he would not be in the country when it happened. And of course, he has denied all of these allegations. But Kid Cudi's team released a statement to New York Times after that civil suit dropped and said, this is all true. This was true to my experience. And so I think people are probably searching for that again now because they know he's about to take the stand and they're anticipating what he may reveal on the stand as a result of that.
Okay, one of the other questions they're asking, what happened to Kim Porter? Porter, of course, the mother of 4 of Sean Combs' children.
Yeah, she unfortunately died in 2018 of pneumonia, former model and a longtime on-again, off-again partner of Sean Combs.
All right. And then another question that people have, how much is Diddy worth?
Yes, that net worth has gone down substantially. In 2019, Forbes had him at about $780 million. The end of last year, maybe somewhere between $300 and $400 million, still a substantial amount of money. But people are probably searching for that because they're aware of at least the civil suit payoff for Cassie, and they know that there are some other civil suits that are still pending right now.
And his current legal bills as well. Kelly Carter,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back with new episodes every day of the trial. The show streams right here on ABC News Live, Disney Plus, and Hulu, weekdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. For even more on the Diddy trial, make sure to follow our podcast, Bad Rap, the case against Diddy, hosted by our very own Brian Buckmeyer on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'm Eva Pilgrim in New York. Have a good rest of your day.